The ink on my divorce papers was not even dry when I boarded a flight with my 2 children and left Boston forever. At the exact same hour, my ex-husband and his wealthy family gathered in a private maternity clinic to celebrate his mistress and her ultrasound. They had no idea the doctor was about to hand them a truth that would destroy all of them. My name is Vanessa Hale, 33, a forensic accountant who spent 8 years married to a man who saw me as nothing more than a placeholder. "Sign it, Vanessa," Bradley said flatly, not even looking at me across the mahogany table. Beside him sat his mother Eleanor, wrapped in cashmere, radiating smug satisfaction. "We are offering you $100,000, she said. "Considering you brought nothing into this family, take the children and disappear quietly." Behind them sat Chloe, 24 and pregnant, flashing a diamond ring bought 3 weeks earlier on a joint card I had already quietly removed myself from. They wanted the house. They wanted room for what they called the true heir. For 8 years, I swallowed their insults about my modest background and their cruelty toward my son Owen, whose asthma Eleanor blamed on my inferior genes. They wanted me to break down and beg. Instead, I picked up the pen and signed everything without a single tremor. What they did not know was that 7 months earlier, I had discovered Bradley's affair, and being a forensic accountant, I did not confront him. I disappeared into the numbers instead. I found that Walter's real estate empire, the source of their endless arrogance, was collapsing under $15 million in hidden debt, and that my name had been secretly attached as guarantor on nearly all of it. So I went to work quietly. Over 6 months, I hired an independent legal team and proved Walter had forged my signature on his loans, forcing the banks to immediately release me from that debt. I compiled a 400-page dossier on his tax fraud and mailed it anonymously to the IRS. And I knew that the moment my name left the deed to our $2.5 million house, the mortgage would default within days. I boarded my flight to Edinburgh with Grace and Owen, my entire fortune already secured overseas through a post-nuptial agreement Bradley never bothered to read. The next morning, while I sipped tea in a quiet Scottish cafe, the Whitfield family arrived at the clinic like conquering royalty, ready to sign a $5 million trust for their new heir. Then the doctor delivered the ultrasound results. The baby was healthy. The baby was a boy. And then his expression changed. "The genetic panel shows the baby carries the sickle cell trait," he said carefully. Eleanor scoffed, insisting it was a lab error since their bloodline was flawless. The doctor explained gently that this trait requires a biological parent of African, Mediterranean, or Middle Eastern descent. And looking between pale blonde Bradley and pale blonde Chloe, he delivered the sentence that shattered the room. "It is medically impossible for Bradley to be the father of this child." The silence was suffocating. Chloe could not speak. Then, one by one, every eye in the room slowly turned toward the only other man present who fit that description, Marcus, Bradley's own brother-in-law, standing quietly by the window. Chloe broke down sobbing, confessing they had been together for months, that Marcus knew about the pregnancy all along, and that their plan was to let Bradley raise the child until the trust fund cleared, then disappear together with the money. Savannah, Marcus' wife, dropped her phone in horror as her marriage and her family collapsed in the same instant. While the family imploded inside that clinic, their empire was collapsing outside it. Walter's phone rang with news that federal agents had frozen every account after receiving an anonymous tax fraud dossier. 3 banks called in $15 million in debt the moment my name was removed as guarantor. By the time the family stumbled outside, their credit cards were declined at the valet stand, and federal agents were already changing the locks on the Beacon Hill estate they had fought so hard to keep. That afternoon, in my quiet Edinburgh cafe, I opened 70 voicemails. Bradley begged me to fix everything, insisting he was the real victim. Eleanor, who once called me a genetic dead end, now begged for family unity and money. I listened to every message calmly, then sent one final text explaining exactly what I had done and why none of it could ever be undone. Then I deleted the account and closed that chapter forever. 6 months later, I stood beneath Edinburgh Castle with Grace and Owen, both of them healthy, happy, and finally safe. Walter was indicted on federal fraud charges. Eleanor lost her social circle overnight and now rents a small apartment far from the country club she once ruled. Bradley works a minimum wage job, mourning the family he threw away for a lie.